As a real estate investor, what will happen if Donald Trump wins the 2020 election? In this video, we're going to break down Trump's past actions and future promises to see what will happen if Trump wins the 2020 election and how that'll affect you as a real estate investor. Let's get into it. The truth is that I never really used to care about politics until I became a real estate investor. Why do politics even matter for real estate investors? It's because the environment in which you invest in is the United States. Some policies that get passed by the president or Congress can make it easier or harder for you to invest and make more money as a real estate investor. So for example, Bernie wanted to place a 25% tax on homes sold for profit that were owned by non-occupied owners, which means anyone who's trying to do a flip would get a 25% tax. And it would be a 2% tax on homes that were vacant, meaning if you had an investment property where the tenants weren't there, you would have to pay 2% extra tax. Both of those are literally just completely stupid and insane. These are my opinions. They literally kill real estate investors. Now look, I get what Bernie was trying to do with a plan like that, but it ends up hurting people because in the end, it prevents investors from coming in to buy in crappier areas, and then why would they spend the money to make a place look a lot nicer, which helps the area as a whole, if they get no financial gain from it? So as an investor, you need to make sure you're looking at the policies of both candidates and factor that into your vote, because your vote matters. We're gonna break this down by covering the topic, why it matters for real estate investors in general. Then I'm gonna take a look at what Trump has done for that specific topic and what future promises they've done. And then I'll give you my opinion on how that affects real estate investors backed by data. Now, if you get triggered by this video, that is your fault.
Putting the opportunity zone? Oh yeah?
First up is crime. The lower the crime, the more likely you'll want to invest there, because that means that home values will increase over time and rents will hopefully increase over time. Let's look at the facts behind the crime for Obama's first 3 years in office and Trump's first 3 years in office. The Bureau of Justice has statistics on US residents who are 12 or older who face property crimes and violent crimes. In Obama's first 3 years of office, 2009, 2010, and 2011, he had a 0.44, a 0.43, and 0.47% of people face violent crimes in America. In Trump's first 3 years of office, in 2017, 2018, and 2019, Trump had a 0.45, a 0.5, and a 0.44. So when you compare the two, Trump had overall a little bit more crime than Obama did for his first 3 years. That doesn't show the whole picture though. Let's take a look at property crimes. In 2009, the property crimes were 127.4, in 2010, 120.2, and in 2011, 138.7 per 1,000 people. Now, if you compare that to Trump, in 2017, there was 118.6, in 2018, 108.2, and in 2019, 101.4 per 1,000 people, which, by the way, was the lowest level on record since they started doing this in 1993. Okay, that's enough about the past. What are Trump's policies moving forward that could either help or hurt crime? The Trump campaign has come out and said that they're in support of law and order. They claim to back the police. The DOJ has given $98 million in order to hire an extra 802 full-time law enforcement officers. He's also expanded Project Safe Neighborhood, which has incentivized U.S. attorneys to work in areas where there's higher crime in order to find ways to reduce the crime. He actually signed an executive order that bans chokeholds except in situations where deadly force is able to be used. He created a national database of police misconduct, and they're providing extra funding for police departments that actually meet those standards. Now, it was at this point that I was like, does actually more policing help? I needed evidence to prove or disprove this. There was actually a study published in the Journal of Public Economics in 2019, and they looked at increased police and increased police funding and what that did in areas of crime. It actually showed that each additional police officer prevented 4 violent crimes and 15 property crimes. And it seemed to be in areas that were most affected by the Great Recession, which means areas that were the poorest. So given that property crimes have decreased under Trump, that Trump is down to give more funding to police, and that more policing equals safer cities and towns due to statistically significant evidence, we can say that if Trump gets reelected in 2020, that the crime rate is likely going to drop. And if the crime rate drops, then home values will continue to increase up, and so will rents. The next factor is coronavirus recovery. It's clear that coronavirus has changed up the game. People are leaving cities, moving to suburbs, afraid to go out and do normal life things. So the economy has changed. And when the economy is down, home prices tend to suffer. So it's important to see what the next president will do in order to help us get out of this situation. What did Trump really do about coronavirus? Since we don't really have anything to compare this to in terms of like handling another pandemic, it's hard to say who could have done it better. But he was caught on tape saying that he was trying to calm the American people down and play it down a little bit. So one thing he could have done was actually communicate more clearly, communicate in line with what the scientists were saying, what the CDC was saying, and all in one communication. That clear communication could have maybe calmed people's fears and given people the right guidelines of what to do and what not to do. All right, so here's a little bit about what he actually did. He signed an executive order that gave $400 a week to people who are out of work. He extended the paused evictions all the way till the end of the year, and he continued to pause interest on student loans that were accruing over time. He has been working with a bunch of medical companies, specifically Pfizer, to produce 100 million doses of a coronavirus vaccine. He has cut FDA regulations in order to be able to make a vaccine be produced even quicker and allow for therapies to come in even quicker. He stopped travel from China and Europe earlier when most people said it was a little bit too early. We have become the country that has given the most coronavirus tests out there. I've actually taken 2 and both of them were free for me. He has worked with private companies in order to make more masks, more hand sanitizer, more ventilators, over 100,000 of them, and he has worked with community testing centers in order to be able to give testing to uninsured Americans. At the time I'm making this, there's at least 3 different vaccines that are in the last stage of trials, meaning that once this trial is over, they can have them produced and ready to go for Americans out there. Also, he worked on the Paycheck Protection Program, which saved about 51 million jobs. He sent direct payments to the American people. He pushed the tax deadline back, so this way you had more time to file your taxes and pay the government back. And they allowed for mortgage forbearances. The height of the unemployment rate was back in April, and we were at 14.7%. It has now dropped nearly half to September's unemployment rate, which was 7.9%. That's such amazing progress in such a short time. All right, so after all that, you can tell that the Trump administration has actually done a lot for coronavirus, despite what the news might actually say. And I was actually impressed to hear all this stuff as I'm reading it. While they definitely need to get better at communicating and being on the same page, because Trump says something and Fauci says another, we could also argue for years of whether or not they did a good job at the start, if they took this thing as seriously as they possibly could. But hindsight is always 20/20, so I can't say sitting here that any of us could have done any better. So all of the effects, while helping the economy in the short term, printing money can actually hurt the economy in the long term by devaluing the US dollar. So for now, I have to give Trump a slight point on this one because what he has done has actually helped the economy recover, and we see that in the data. The next factor we're gonna take a look at is taxes. The truth is the more that people get taxed, the less they have to spend. If you have less money to spend, there's less money going around in the economy. That also means there's less money that people can use to buy houses, and there's less money that people can use to pay for rent. So higher taxes hurt the economy and hurt you as a real estate investor, and lower taxes help the economy and help you as a real estate investor. So what has Trump done for taxes? He actually signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which went into effect the 2018 tax year, which means you didn't see it reflected in your tax return till 2019. As you probably know, there's a thing called tax brackets. And if you make a certain amount to a certain amount and you're within that certain range, then you're gonna pay a certain percentage of your money to taxes to the federal government. Now, Trump actually lowered the tax percentage in almost every single bracket. And the only group that didn't have a tax decrease was anyone making less than $9,520. Anyone less than that, and you're worried about getting a tax break, just work on getting your bread up, all right? Anyone who made between $9,525 to $38,700, he lowered the tax rate from 15 to 12%. If you make between $38,700 to $82,500, Then he lowered the rate from 25 to 22%. If you made between $82,500 to $157,500, he lowered your rate from 28 to 24%. And when you get to the higher income tax brackets, the bracket income ranges change variably, but overall, the tax is lowered for most people in this range as well. Most people who aren't investors usually take the standard deduction, which is usually just a deduction that you get just for being you. He actually doubled it from $6,350 to $12,000, which means that more people got to deduct more money off of their income and from taxes. Now, real estate investors take what's called itemized deductions, and one of the ways you can actually itemize deductions as real estate investors is by taking the mortgage interest you pay for your properties and subtracting that from your taxable income. That you don't have to pay taxes on that money. Now, Trump actually lowered that amount, which is weird, right? Because he's a real estate investor, from $1 million to $750,000. There's a few other things that Trump has done for tax cuts. If you have children under the age of 17, he doubled the amount of credit you get for each child. He took the corporate tax rate from 35% all the way down to 21%, which allows businesses to have more money, to pay employees more, and to spend more. Okay, so now what will Trump do for taxes moving forward? It's all great what he did in the past. He is actually gonna repeal the payroll tax. This is what he said. So if you have a full-time job, you're actually paying 7.65% of your paycheck to what's called payroll tax, and that covers Medicare and Social Security and a few other things. And your company that you work for actually pays the other 7.65%. That means if Trump removes the payroll tax, your company will get to keep an extra 7.65% of every employee they pay, and you will get to keep an extra 7.65%. But even better yet, if you are self-employed, meaning you're a contractor or freelancer, you have to pay both of these yourself, which means you are gonna get over 15% of your pay back in your pocket instead of it going to the federal government. That's a large portion of your pay. Now, there's a slight issue with this that people are concerned about, is where would the money come from to cover Medicare and Social Security and these other programs? I honestly don't know. All right, given what Trump has mostly done has been lowered taxes overall. Lowering taxes on businesses allows businesses to spend more and give more money to employees and hire more people. The more money you have in your pocket as an investor allows you to spend more on investing. I see Trump's taxes in the past and his future plans to really only help you as an investor. So the last factor we're gonna take a look at is the unemployment rate, job growth, and economy, all in like one. The better the economy is doing, that means there's gonna be more jobs and usually higher wages. If there's more jobs and higher wages, then more people can pay rent, more people can buy properties, which usually means rents will increase, and you'll have less vacancies, which means you'll have more payments, and home values will increase over time. So a better economy, a lower unemployment rate is better for you as an investor. Under the Trump administration, in the first 3 years in office, they added 6.7 million jobs, which took the unemployment rate from 4.7% to 3.5%, the lowest we've ever had on history since 1969 in December. Trump actually increased the manufacturing jobs by 487,000, while it actually had a net drop under the Obama administration of 193,000. The economy actually grew faster under Trump than it did under Obama. In 2017, it grew 2.4%, in 2018, it grew 2.9%, and in 2019, it grew 2.1%. The median household income actually increased to the highest it's ever been since 1999. It dipped right after 2007 and it had a slow decline until 2014, but then under Trump, it had a sharp rise. Now this means that the average household is making more money under Trump. A lot of people have said that Trump only helped the richest Americans, and that's not true. Poverty actually decreased under Trump. The number of Americans living under the poverty line in the United States has dropped every year since Trump has been in office. As for the stock market, the S&P 500 increased 47.1% since the first day he took into office. One big red flag that we have to pay attention to is that the national debt has increased $6.1 trillion under Trump. The average increase in wages was 2.5%, and it increased higher than cost, which means people had more money to spend. All right, that's enough numbers for you on the economy. Unfortunately, Trump hasn't really talked about what he plans on doing post-coronavirus, other than getting us back to work. All of this has been pretty much pre-coronavirus numbers. So I don't have much more to give you in terms of what will happen afterwards. So if we take coronavirus out of the picture, which is honestly a case of its own, I think Trump would do amazing for the economy, like he's already done. He's proven that by adding jobs to the economy and reducing the unemployment rate, more people can pay for rent, more people can buy houses, which means that home values will increase and rents will also increase, which is great for you as an investor. Now, after looking at all of Trump's policies and actions and what he's done and what he plans on doing, I really think that a Trump presidency will help the real estate market, have an overall positive effect. Meaning that with the Trump presidency, we may see home values continue to go up, interest rates continue to stay low, investors keep investing, and we'll see rents continue to rise as jobs and wages grow behind it. Here's the thing, it doesn't really matter who gets elected. A president is gonna make it maybe 5 or 10% more difficult or more easier for you to actually invest. But if you take what I'm teaching you and apply it, my 4-step process, then you can actually learn how to make cash flow right away from your first investment property and not have to really worry about what president gets elected and what they do to try to stop you or hurt you over the long term, because a large portion of it is in your control. Now, if you're wondering what happens if Biden wins, click on screen somewhere to see my video breakdown of that.